Hello everyone, back into today's first video. Big video update coming up for you right now. We've got the 6th Winter 2019-2020 update. So we have 67 tabs to go through, and we're going to go through analogues, and we're going to talk about sea surface temperature anomalies. We're going to talk about Siberian snow cover and many other things as well. And in the final part of the video, we'll have a bit of a QBO special. So I know that's something quite a few of you have been waiting for, to see the reanalysis for the QBO for this season. We're going to bring that to you in the final part of the video. So sit back and enjoy. It's going to be an epic, have to say, but get yourself a comfy chair, get yourself a cup of tea and some biscuits. We'll be here for a while, but I think it's going to be quite an interesting watch. Right, so coming up later on today, we're going to have the quite an interesting update in its own terms. Going to have the first written update for Christmas. So we haven't yet started video updates for Christmas. Video Christmas countdown hasn't started yet. That will be the 1st of November. But before we get that going, for 2 or 3 weeks before it, we'd like to do a few written updates. So the first written update for Christmas will be with around 3 o'clock this afternoon. That should be an interesting read. And talking of an interesting read, this video will be placed on the winter updates and forecast page, and there'll be a written summary going over everything that we discussed in the video, and I'll get that up for you on winter updates page, probably around 8 o'clock. It'll be quite late because at 5 o'clock I've got to do a live stream on the GWV YouTube channel. So between 5 and 6 o'clock there's going to be a live stream. We'll be talking about this winter update and answering a few of your questions as well. So, busy old day. Do keep checking back to all of the updates. But I think we better get on with the 6th Winter 2019-2020 update for you right now. Just say big thank you to our analogues guru, James Acriel, as always, for getting the analogues together for us. So, big thank you, James, for doing that. Also to Richard Trott for the GWV's Winter 2019-2020 updates GIF. And I think that's everything that I'm going to tell you. So, without further ado, I think we better get on with it. So we're going to start off where we left off last week, actually, looking at the CT for September. So last week, of course, we did September pattern matching just to sort of set up the September data. So that's what we signed off with in last week's 5th update. But this week, we're going on to proper September data. So we're going to look at the September Central England temperature, and the CET for September 2019 came out at 14.3. There it is. So CET for September 2019 was 14.3. Which means we're going to look at past Septembers with a CET range of 14.2 to 14.4, placing, of course, September 2019 right in the middle at 14.3. CET range of 14.2 to 14.4. And the winters that follow them. So this is the first September with a CET range of 14.2 to 14.4. It's September 1854, and this is how the winter of 1855 looks as it follows it. And it's an unsettled winter with below average heights in winter of 1855, I should say. It's an unsettled winter with below average heights across much of Western and Central Europe. There is a blocking signal, but it's more over towards the Canadian side of Greenland. I suspect this would allow cold conditions into that trough of low pressure at times, but overall probably not a line quite right, actually, to be a cold winter. Overall, probably a relatively unsettled winter, but I imagine there will be cold conditions going into that trough of low pressure at times. Very unsettled winter, potentially. So the next winter, following a September with a CET range of 14.2 to 14.4, is the winter of 1868-1869. Now, this winter is the warmest winter on record, so if you want a cold winter, it's not a very good sign, actually, to see this turning up in the Analogues package. This is an exceptionally mild winter, the warmest winter on record, not beaten, actually, interestingly, certainly in terms of the CET, by any of the warm winters that we've had over the past sort of 30 years. We have had a lot of them, but none of them have actually managed to beat this winter, the winter of 1868, 1869. This exceptionally mild winter, bringing up those southwesterly winds, and it's just a really wet but really Atlantic driven and very mild winter in 1868, 1869. Our next winter, with a CT range of, following a September CT range of 14.2 to 40.9, is just one winter on. It's 1869, 1870. This one has much more in the way of northern blocking, so it's got a big blocking signal up towards Greenland, with a trough of below average heights through the UK and much of Western Europe. Again, I'm not sure it's just quite lining up right to be a particularly cold winter. It's a very unsettled winter. I imagine it would have had many more cold snaps within it compared to the extraordinarily warm winter that preceded it, winter of 1868, 1869. I think the winter of 1869, 1870 was overall a very unsettled winter. It's not a particularly cold winter, I don't think, but it does have more cold potential compared to the winter before it. The next one is 1891, 1892. This one just looks like a rather mild and wet winter, so below average heights close to the UK, much of West Europe. Again, we see that signal for blocking to be there or thereabouts, but again, it's more over towards the Canadian side of the Atlantic and Greenland, which pretty much, I think, leaves us bringing in milder westerly winds for that one. Then a long gap with September's with a CT range of 14.2 to 14.4. A long gap to September 1936. So this is the winter of 1936, 1937. This one also looks unsettled and relatively mild, with below average heights again close to the UK. There is some above average heights to our east, to the east of Scandinavia and west of Russia, but I think overall this again is a relatively mild winter, bringing those westerly winds in the winter of 1936 and 1937. There are many mild winters through the first 40 years of the 20th century. And I think that's another relatively mild winter, but also quite wet winter in 36, 37. Now, this is a much colder winter. This is winter of 1939, 1940. Again, following that September CET range of 14.2 to 14.4. You can see the difference with all of the other winters that we've seen so far. Yes, many of them have had blocking, but not in this sort of position. The blocking is slap bang over Greenland, and this time it's extending down towards Iceland as well. And the upshot is that we've got low pressure in the Atlantic, and with the jet stream on a southerly track, that low pressure is actually trending to the south of us. So this allows much colder air to dig in from the north and the northeast. You see the difference to all of those other charts that we've looked at, that many of them did have a blocking signal, but this one is absolutely perfect for us to be cold. And so the winter of 1939-1940 was a severely cold winter. It was the first severely cold winter since 1895. So there was something like a 40 to 45 year gap between severe winters from 1895 to 1940, and that is how the exceptionally mild first winter of the Second World War 39-40 looks. It shows up in our analogues package. The next winter is 1945-1946, again following that September CET range of 14.2 to 14.4. This one has a bit of a northern blocking signal. It's not all that strong though, but it does have some above average heights to the north. Below average heights are kind of to our east. I think this is just one of those nondescript type winters really 45, 46. It's neither one thing or another. And of course, what's probably going on there is that it's beginning to set up the pattern that will follow in the next winter. So it is interesting when it has a northern blocking signal, but it is a weak and reduced northern blocking signal. We know what happens in the following winter, which is 46, 47. That winter, the northern blocking signal, we go to town with it, and it's an extremely cold and snowy winter. This one just kind of like hints, maybe, at where things are going to go later on the following year. But for this one, for this winter, it's one of those nondescript sort of winters, neither one thing nor another. The next winter, following a September CT range 40.2 to 40.4, is winter of 1955-1956. This one has above average heights to the south of Greenland, below average heights to the south and east of the country. It doesn't look particularly dramatic, but this area of high pressure up here also giving the game away, so there is blocking available. What happens with this winter is that it's very mild early on, Atlantic driven, and mild December in 1955. Then as the winter progresses, it gets colder and colder, and we finish up with an exceptionally cold February in 1956. So it's sort of a transitional type winter from a mild Atlantic driven pattern early on to a severely cold pattern by the time we get through to February 1956. Next winter is only one winter on, it's 56, 57, again following that September CT range 14.2 to 14.4. This one is just a relatively mild Atlantic driven winter with low pressure in the Atlantic, bringing in those westerly winds. It does have a cold snap in December of 1956, and that happens to coincide with Christmas, so it does have a little bit of a white Christmas in 1956, but otherwise it's a mild Atlantic driven winter there. And then quite a long gap again through to winter of 1970-1971. Again, following that September CT range 14.2 to 14.4. This one is an interesting winter. It's quite an anticyclonic winter with a fair amount of high pressure. It's a relatively mild and dry type winter, but it does have quite a cold second half to December. Again, it coincides with Christmas, and December 1970 was a white Christmas with easterly winds across many parts of the country. 1973-1974 is our next winter. This one wet and mild, bringing in those west-southwesterly winds. That's just a really mild and unsettled winter for that one. And then another pretty big winter follows for 1978-1979. It's interesting that a few of these winters are cropping up a little bit through these analogues updates that we've done so far. This is one of them, I think, that's cropping up a bit. September CT range of 14.2 to 14.4 in September 1978 is followed by this winter, the winter of discontent, with below average heights and an active jet stream and storm track running to our south. Strong northern blocking centered over Greenland, and yeah, we're bringing in those bitterly cold east or northeasterly winds. It's a very cold winter with regular snowfalls in the winter of 1978-1979. Next winter is 82-83. So this one is an unsettled winter, really. It has above average heights in the Atlantic. It has below average heights up to our north, low pressures up to the north, and again we're bringing those westerly winds, stormy and mild through December and into the new year. Does get colder later on. February of 1983 is quite cold, and then that cold weather extends into the spring of 1983 too. Another fairly long gap then to 1998. So this is winter of 97-98 following that September CT range 14.2 to 14.4. This one is an exceptionally mild winter. This one's showing up quite a bit, by the way, in our analogues this year so far. So this one with below average heights in the Atlantic, above average heights over to south-southeast of the country, and we're dragging up those very mild, if not warm, southerly winds. Exceptionally mild winter in 97-98. And then the next one is 2002-2003. So this one looks like it should be quite a cold winter, but it isn't particularly. It has an area of above average height centred kind of between Iceland and Norway, with below average heights to our south. You'd look about and think we're probably bringing in a lot of easterly winds, but we aren't really. It's not a particularly cold winter. In fact, it's a relatively mild winter. It does have a couple of potent cold snaps in January of 2003. But overall, that's a mild and relatively dry winter, I think, winter of 2002, 2003. The next winter is 2003-04. So this one has above average heights just out to our west, below average heights to our east. Quite a cold winter, this, across northern and eastern, central and southeast parts of Europe. So you can see where the jet stream's digging down through there. So it is a cold winter across eastern and northeastern parts of Europe. I mean, classically down into the Balkans and into Greece, those sort of areas, hogging all the snow. Where we are, we do have high pressure up to our west, but it's modified, and we're bringing the wind regularly in from the west. So it's not a particularly cold winter, although it does have a cold second half of February and lasting into early March. And then the final winter is 2009-2010, and of course this one is another cold winter. So a real mixed bag, these analogues. With this one, again, with below average heights of the jet stream down to our south, we've got this strong blocking area of high pressure over Greenland. That's forcing cold air down into the trough of low pressure. So again, that one is a cold winter. It's the coldest winter actually since 1979 for most parts of the country. Coldest winter since 1963 for Scotland. That's a really wintry type winter in 09-10. Real mixed bag with this analogues package following this September CET range of 14.2 to 14.4. But putting it all together, this is how the analogues are coming out. So all Decembers combined tends to have an area of above average heights, but quite a weak one in the North Atlantic and to the south of Greenland, with below average heights sort of through the UK and much of Western Europe. You can see there is a bit of cold potential there with those Decembers, but the blocking really needs to be stronger than that. So I'd imagine most of those, and there will be cold Decembers within that package of analogues, but I would imagine most of those Decembers are probably relatively mild and probably relatively wet too. That's how things are looking when we combine all Januaries together, following a CT range 14.2 to 14.4. We tend to have low pressure sort of pushed a bit further southwards, but blocking signal is lifting up to our north. So I think there's greater potential for the Januaries to be cold, but it's not clear-cut. Again, a lot of those Januaries are probably mild, wet and Atlantic-driven. There's a minority, I would think, that are much colder. We know that 2010 is within this analogues package, so therefore it's one of those where probably it still favours mild and wet, but an increased possibility of something colder in January. Now this is February, much more interesting with the blocking in February. So you'll notice that the blocking is a lot stronger, and it really is centred around Greenland now, which is having the effect of moving the trough of low pressure and the jet stream southwards. So we've been seeing this quite a bit actually in our analogues this year so far, I think. February definitely out of the three favouring something potentially a lot colder, dragging in those east or northeasterly winds. So out of the three winter months, I think February definitely has the greatest possibility of being cold when we have this CT range in September of 14.2 to 14.4. All Marches combined also looking very interesting, and something you do find that is, if February is doing something, March tends to do something similar a lot of the time. So again, strong northern blocking centred around Greenland and Iceland with these Marches. Low pressure to the south, jet stream is pushed southwards as well. Obviously, February and March have the greatest chance of being cold and wintry. And all winters combined, finally, following a September CT range of 14.2 to 14.4, looks like this. We tend to get a blocking signal, definitely. There is a northern blocking signal around Greenland, low pressure tends to be in the Atlantic, and hints at a jet stream being a bit to our south. Again, bear in mind it's an idea that as we start winter in December, we only have a slight blocking signal. It increases as the winter progresses. So it is a progressive type blocking pattern for these winters following a September CT range of 14.2 to 14.4. And at that point, I think we will pause the video there. We shall go and get a little drink of water or whatever you'd like to drink while you're watching winter updates, and we'll meet back in around 2 seconds time, and then we will carry on with the rest of our methodology. Got a lot more to talk about, and I'll see you very, very shortly. Okay, we're back, and we are ready to resume the SIP Winter 2019-2020 update from GWVLinks.com. So before the break, we was talking about winters following September's with a CT range of 14.2 to 14.4, and quite interesting analogues we have there. They're a bit of a mixed bag, but I think overall we did get an idea that the winters following those September CT ranges tended to get blocked and colder as we went along. So the earlier winter months, December and to some degree January, tended to be a milder signal, still with blocking though, even there. And then the blocking really locks in the Februaries and the Marches. So quite an interesting package of analogues, and I think that is something that we've seen a little bit actually through these updates so far. Well, now we're going to go on and have a look at the rest of our winter methodology. So I'll go back for you very shortly. Just say that next week, by the way, the 7th update will include more September data. I think we're going to be looking at September precipitation. September 2019 precipitation, and looking at years that had similar rainfall, and the winters that followed them. So that'll be next week, though. Right then, let's get on with it. We're going to start off this second part of the video with solar activity. So this is how things were looking on the solar disk on our side for this today from solarham.net. Completely spotless solar disk, no sunspots to be seen at all. Therefore, solar activity is at very low levels, obviously, because there isn't any sunspots. And Solarham is reporting that solar activity is expected to remain at very low levels for the next 3 days at least. This is the GWV 6th Winter Update Solar Activity Tracker, updated by our good friend James Ackrill to the 5th of October. So again, it confirms what we already know, that we're at solar minimum. Our thick green and red lines are our trend lines, and you can see they are very much on the floor of the chart. The orange line is depicting each individual day's sunspot. So you can see a couple of days ago we did have a sunspot, just one lowly little sunspot. Couple of days ago. It was from it was a solar cycle 24 sunspot. So again, we haven't yet moved into the new solar cycle number 25. So we're getting the occasional day, the odd day that has a sunspot. But again, you can see how many of the days now don't have any sunspots. So the days that don't have sunspots are outnumbering the days that do, and we went into this situation in May, so that's the start of May with that sunspot just there, or those sunspots just there, I suppose I should say. But from around the middle of May, that's when we seem to decline into true solar minimum, where we're getting these long stretches now where the orange line, which meant that depicts each individual day's sunspot numbers, this orange line just flatlining away on the floor of the chart day after day without any sunspots, just interrupted by the occasional day here and there that has a sunspot. But it's a different situation to what we had before May, when we had these orange lines just here regularly lifting up, albeit at a very low level. Even that is a really low level of solar activity. But before May, most days had at least one sunspot. But now the days that don't have sunspots are outnumbering the days that do. And that is what you see when you are in true solar minimum. We don't know when we're going to come out of this solar minimum until it happens. We won't know when we're going to start the new solar cycle until it happens. I suspect it'll be sometime in the next 6 to 12 months. We shall see. But this is almost certainly going to be the solar minimum winter of solar cycle number 24. And in a couple of weeks' time, I think it'll be the last Sunday in October, actually. That might be the 28th of October. We're going to have a solar special. I think it'll be the 9th winter update. We're going to do a solar special. We'll update all of the solar trackers, and we will look at analogues and reanalysis to show you what is being favoured when you're at solar minimum. So I think that'll be the 9th update, the last Sunday of October. That's going to be a really big update, to put it in your diary. Big thank you to James for updating the GWV's 6th Winter Update Solar Activity Tracker. This has been updated and sent through to us by a good friend, Richard Short. This is showing the current stretch of spotlessness, and also how we're ranking in terms of days without any sunspots in this year. So again, we can see that in 2019 we have had a total so far of 202 days. That is 72% of the year without any sunspots. 202 days and 72% of the year. That compares to 2018, to last year, which had 221 days without any sunspots, which was 61% of the year. So you can see how the solar activity is weaker this year compared to last year. It's already pretty weak last year, but you can see there's definitely that trend there, that solar activity has weakened further through 2019, and that takes us, of course, into solar minimum. If we go down to the last solar minimum, which is 2008, we're roughly around there now, actually. So 2008 had 268 days without any sunspots. That was 73% of the year. So 73% in 2008 compared to 72% in 2019. I think that pretty much confirms what we know, which is that we are very much at solar minimum. 2009 is interesting. It's the first full year of solar cycle 24, of this solar cycle. And solar activity then was pretty much still at solar minimum levels, 260 days without sunspots, 71% of the year. It was a very, very slow lift up out of solar minimum and into the new solar cycle, and that sort of tells you how slow it was to begin to increase solar activity. By the time we get through to 2010, we have 51 days without any sunspots. That's 14% of the year. But a lot of those sunspots were quite weak even then. It wasn't really until 2011 that solar cycle 24 started to take off. And even then, it was a very, very weak solar cycle, as we know. Anyway, again, that confirms that we are at solar minimum. Big thank you to James and to Richard for that. And as I say, update number 9, winter update number 9, I think that one is going to be the solar special. So put it in your diary. It'll be a very, very interesting update indeed, last Sunday of October, which I think is the 28th. Right, moving on to sea surface temperature anomalies in the ocean. So this is how the sea surface temperature anomalies were looking last week. We did last week's 5th winter 2019-2020 update. We've got our 3 areas of interest. We've got the ENSO region just here. We've got the Northern Pacific over there. And, of course, we've got the North Atlantic over here. That's how the situation was looking last week. We did last week's 5th winter update. Let's have a look at the latest. Up to the 3rd of October. Let's deal with the ENSO region first of all. So ENSO region, of course, is just there. That's how things look now in the ENSO region. Going back to last week, I think we can say that the colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies have declined a little bit in the past week. So it looks like the ENSO region, in that eastern part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, where we have had a weak, weakish sort of La Nina type signal, it looks like that has actually weakened this week, and the sea surface temperature anomalies are beginning to lift up. So this is probably going to take us out of any chance of a weak La Nina for this winter. It's now, to me, looking as though it's almost very, I'm not, well, I nearly said almost certainly, but I won't go that far. But I think it is very likely now that this is going to be an ENSO neutral winter. Wouldn't totally rule out the chance of a weak El Nino. I think, though, there's enough colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies around here, particularly to the off the coast of Chile. I think there's enough there to stop us going into a weak El Nino, but it does look to me like it'd be ENSO neutral, possibly ENSO neutral on the warm side. So that sort of expanding area of colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies that we have seen over the past few weeks and past 2 or 3 months in that eastern part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, that sort of went backwards this week, and there's definite warming took place there from last week to this week. Only very slight, only very modest, not worth getting too over the top about it, but definitely the sea surface temperature anomalies did warm up a little bit in the eastern equatorial Pacific Ocean. Going further north into the northern Pacific Ocean, remains very warm in this northeastern corner of the northern Pacific Ocean. It is a little bit cooler down the coast of America, so I have got some slight cooler than average sea surface temperature anomalies just there. Those are shallow waters, though, prone to rapid changes in temperature with the weather. So I'm not sure they're really depicting that things will go colder in this sort of in the deeper waters of the northeastern Pacific. Looks like though just there, those warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies are very well ingrained and very well entrenched. Going back to the Atlantic, that's how the Atlantic looked last week. This is the latest. Very little change. It is possibly cooling still a little bit around here, and possibly going down this eastern coast. But overall, the Atlantic looks quite close to average now. We've certainly lost those significantly warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies that we had around here back in the summer and into the start of September. It was relatively warm there. Definitely things have cooled down in the northern Atlantic Ocean over the past week or two. And I would say the sea surface temperature is now relatively close to average, not a particularly big deviation either way, but obviously it's a bit of a cooling trend that we've got at the moment. This is how the SOI is looking. This is the Southern Oscillation Index. So this is an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state in the Southern Ocean. When the Southern Oscillation Index is in its positive phase, then the atmospheric setup in the South Pacific, measuring the air pressures between Darwin and Tahiti in the positive phase of the SOI, the atmospheric setup will be reflective of a La Nina. But when the SY is negative, the atmospheric setup will be reflective of El Nino. Now, I have had a lot of negativity of the SOI, which we can see here from this red line, which is the 30-day trend. This is from the Bureau of Meteorology, by the way. Not sure and Queensland government, not sure I said that. So the red line here, you can see how through September that trended from a relatively close to neutral type position to a significantly negative level by sort of late September. As we talked about last week, the SY then started to level off and lift up a little bit as we got into October, getting to that sort of level. Still quite negative, though, at around -12. And in the last few days, it's actually started to dip away once again. If we have a look at the daily returns, these are preliminary, so they are they're not final, but they don't tend to change all that much. We can see that back in the middle of September, we was having real negativity of the SOI. So the 19th of September goes down to -35. The 20th of September goes down to -27. Those are very, very negative numbers. And that's an atmospheric setup that would be strongly reflective of an El Nino type state. But if we scroll up, we can see that the SOI did sort of swing out of that extreme negativity for a while. So 27th and 28th of September at +2 and -1. 30th of September actually at +8. That's quite positive, a little bit reflective of a La Nina type setup. And the first at +2. But since then, the SOI has been going very negative again. 2nd of October comes out at -11. 3rd of October comes out at -20. 4th of October comes out at -19. 5th of October comes out at -20. Again, those are very negative numbers. And if this carries on, then that's the reason I wouldn't totally rout the chance of a weak El Nino, actually, for this winter. So, looking at the SOI, it's no surprise what's happened, really, with those sea surface temperature anomalies. It's no surprise that from last week to this week, we have seen a little bit of warming. It is what you would expect to happen in the Pacific Ocean with these negative returns of the Southern Oscillation Index. And I'd say if this was to go on, it probably won't. Probably see the SOI levelling off and the atmospheric setup going away from this El Nino type pattern. But if the SOI was to carry on with this negativity through to the winter, then I wouldn't totally rule out a chance of a weak El Nino. But I've got a feeling it's going to be ANSO neutral. I remember to put this in this week. You remember last week I had to pause the video while I got this up because I forgot to include it when I got the charts together. So this is the 2019 Atlantic Hurricane Season page from Wikipedia. If we go down and have a look at the latest numbers for this hurricane season, we've had a total so far of 13 depressions, 12 storms. Oops, let's change that. 5 hurricanes and 3 major Category 3 or above hurricanes. So I'm not sure they've increased greatly actually from last week. Possibly the major hurricane has gone up 1. Otherwise, I think quite stable. We are going into a quieter phase of this hurricane season now. That doesn't necessarily mean that we won't get more storms and hurricanes, though October can be quite an active month. So we'll keep a close eye on that. Arctic Oscillation observed and forecast is looking like this at the moment. So the black line shows where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. Red line shows the amber GFS ensembles forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. Remember, it's just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state, same as with the Southern Oscillation Index. It's not driving anything in its own terms. It just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. When the Arctic Oscillation is positive, you've got low pressure over the North Pole. When the Arctic Oscillation is negative, you've got high pressure over the North Pole. At the moment, the Arctic Oscillation is neutral to weakly positive. In the next sort of 4 or 5 days, it's going to go a little bit more positive, and then it looks like it's dropping away actually as we move into the middle of October. This could be a signal for a little bit of northern blocking beginning to get going, possibly around Greenland as we move in towards the middle of October, which could start to pull some colder air down in towards the mid-latitudes. Doesn't look like it stays negative all that long. By the end of the GFS ensembles, which takes into second half of October, 3rd week of October, I suppose, by then we're beginning to see the Arctic Oscillation trying to lift itself back up towards neutral phase. But of course, that's a very long way off. NAO observed and forecast is the same idea. So again, the black line shows where we've been with the NAO. Red line shows the amber GFS ensembles, the forecasting NAO to go. The moment the North Atlantic Oscillation is also in its is in a negative phase. It's been in an extended negative phase with the NAO since back into the spring. Talked about that in update number 1, of course, of the winter 2019-2020 updates. We keep trying to lift the NAO up in towards positive territory, because remember, the default setup with the NAO is positive. When you've got a positive NAO, you have low pressure around Iceland and high pressure through the Azores. That strengthens the Westerlies. And so that's the default setup, and the atmosphere will try and keep getting itself back to its default setup. So in the next few days, we're going to see the NAO trying to lift up to positive territory, just goes sort of weakly positive, but then again falling back, you'll see, as we move into the middle of October. So by mid-October, it looks like we're going to have both the NAO and the AO in negative territory. That could be a signal for things to be rather colder through the mid-latitudes by the middle of October. This is how things look in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole. This is from the JMA, of course. So, that line is the current temperature, where the current temperature is at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over North Pole. Grey line is a trend line at this time, for this time of year. So you'll see we're in a cooling phase with the temperature in the stratosphere over the pole at this time of the year. It's getting colder and colder as you move into winter in the stratosphere. That drives the polar vortex and the zone of winds. More about that in a moment. Actually, we're a little bit colder than average at this top level of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. The black line is a little bit under the grey line, so the temperature at 10 HPA is actually a little bit colder than average, which you would normally associate with a sort of quite a strong polar vortex, and you wouldn't normally associate that with like a negative NAO and AO type combination. Going a bit further down to 30 HPA, that's how things are looking. So again, cooling phase shown by the grey line at 30 HPA. We're close to the grey line in terms of temperature at the moment, indicated by that black line. We're close to the long-term trend, but maybe just a little bit colder than average. Normally you would associate that with strengthened zonal winds, and this is from weatheriscool.com. This is depicting the strength of the zonal winds at 10 HPA. So as the temperature is cooling at 10 HPA, and 30 HPA too, temperature gets colder in the stratosphere over North Pole, so the zonal winds get stronger. Now, there are lots of different coloured lines on this chart. I can't go through all of them. If you want to know what they all depict, then go back to the first Winter 2019-2020 update. That explains what every single line is showing. What we're going to concentrate on is this black line, which is the trend line, so that shows that the zonal winds should be strengthening at this time of the year. Of course, our dates, so that's October, that's November, and that's December just there. As far as we can go now with this is to January. That's kind of like the 31st of January just there. So the zonal winds are getting stronger on average at this time of the year. We have had a little bit weakened zonal winds actually over the past few months, although a few days ago they did go close to average. The green lines just there, they're the GFS ensembles. They're forecasting the zonal winds to be around average actually in the next couple of weeks. So as the temperature is getting colder at 10 HPA, so the zonal winds look like they're going to be quite close to average. It seems the polar vortex is powering up a little bit. The other coloured lines are from the long-range CFS V2. So these are quite interesting just here. We've got 4 coloured lines. We've got 3 pink and 1 blue. So, of course, that's going to be November just there. That's October. Just there, that's December, and that's January. So it looks as though 3 out of 4 of the CFS V2 forecasts are actually going for a weakening zonal wind through November. Not a reversal, although getting quite close to a reversal of the zonal winds. But certainly a weakened and reduced zonal wind at a time when you think zonal winds should be strengthening. Now in December, 2 out of 4 are strengthening the zonal winds. The other 2 out of 4 are keeping the zonal winds quite weak. And then in January, we have this one, of course, going for a sun stratospheric warming in January. That's a midwinter sun stratospheric warming, bringing a reversal of the zonal winds going underneath that 0 line just there. The other ones, though, look like they're strengthening the zonal winds in January. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. No clear direction of travel, certainly not for the winter. But I think to say that 3 out of 4 of those CFS V2 members are going for a weakening of the zonal winds during November at a time when the zonal winds should be strengthening is quite interesting. And we'll see whether that's maintained next week. And then finally, for this middle section of the video, we're going to look at Siberian snow cover. So this is how things were looking across Eurasia last week, when we did last week's winter update. Had a little bit of snow, but it had reduced compared to the week before. But there was snow across Eurasia. That's how things were looking anyway last week. This is the latest, though. Look at that big expanse of snow in the past week across eastern Siberia in particular, this sort of area. Also, though, interestingly, some turning up much further west just there, and a little bit turning up over Scandinavia as well, and actually quite unusually so towards the south of Norway. That is quite unusual to get snow cover that far south this early in October in Norway. Normally it would be confined to mountainous areas and further north. Anyway, over the past week, big expanse of snow across eastern parts of Siberia. Let's see how that is comparing. I want to get rid of this one. And we'll see how that compares to previous years. So this is how things were looking at the same time last year, 2018. You'll see that overall, we are quite clearly significantly ahead, I should say, of last year for Siberian snow cover, and also for Scandinavian and Western Russian snow cover too. Let's go through them. This is 2017. So rapid increase of snow cover at this point in 2017, and I think we're probably a bit behind 2017, although the areas that are covered, that have got snow cover, are somewhat different. But that's 2017. This is 2016, so probably on a par with 2016 for Eastern Siberia, but more across Scandinavia and that northern part of Western Russia. That's 2015, so I think, again, we're ahead of 2015. The areas that are covered are a little bit different, but I think if you was to measure it all out, we'd probably be a bit ahead of 2015 this year too. That's 2014, ahead of 2014, I think. 2013, we're probably behind 2013, actually. 2013 did see a rapid increase in snow cover. And, of course, the reason we're looking at this is because a rapid increase in snow cover across Eurasia during October can translate back to an enhanced Siberian high. We did, in fact, have an enhanced Siberian high for the winter of 2013-2014. But what happened is that the Siberian high went over the pole into Canada, and it helped drive us into an exceptionally mild winter. That's the same point in 2012, so you can see we're ahead of 2012 quite clearly. That's 2011, significantly ahead of 2011, and also significantly ahead of 2010 as well. That's 2009, barely anything at this point, 2009, and the same is true for 2008, that's 2007, we're ahead of that year, and 2006 and 2005, all of these years, quite clearly we're ahead of them. That's 2004, which we're ahead of also. That's 2003. Clearly, we are ahead of 2003 as well. That's 2002. We're probably behind 2002. In fact, we're definitely behind 2002 for Siberian snow cover and Russian snow cover anyway. 2002, we're ahead of that. We're also ahead of 1999 and 1998. We're ahead of both of those years, I think. Maybe fairly close-ish to 1998, but I would suggest a little bit ahead of 98. So we're not doing too badly at all for snow cover at the moment across Siberia and Russia, and also across Scandinavia. I do think it's quite interesting that we've already started to build up some snow cover in the northwest of Russia. How long that lasts for, I'm not sure. I think that will be very prone to melting, but we'll see. It might last. Right, so we've talked for over 45 minutes. Going to pause the video there. When we come back, the last section of this 6th Winter 2019-2020 update will focus on the QBO, quasi-biennial oscillation. So I'll see you very, very shortly. Okay, we're back, and we are ready to resume the final part of the GWV.com 6th Winter 2019-2020 update. Hope you've been enjoying the update so far. Certainly another real epic. We're going to talk about the QBO next, the quasi-biennial oscillation for this final part of the 6th Winter 2019-2020 update. So the QBO is an index that's reflecting the strength of the zone of westerlies, essentially. When you're in a westerly QBO, the zone of westerlies are strengthened. When you're in an easterly QBO, the zone of westerlies are weakened. We've got the latest number in for September 2019 for the QBO. So that's what we'll start off with for this section. So you can see with these numbers, we've got 2018 just there, 2019 just there. 2018 starts off with all of these negative numbers. These are monthly QBO numbers. And these negative numbers tell us that in much of 2018, we was in an easterly QBO. That tells us that the zone of westerlies were weakened through much of 2018, but at the end of the year we started to reverse that and move into a westerly phase of the quasi-biennial oscillation. And so the winter 2018-2019 was actually a strengthening westerly QBO winter. That westerly QBO carried on strengthening through to the summer before beginning to weaken just there in July. July posted the first monthly return that was weaker than the months preceding it. That carried on into August. So July's QBO number comes out at plus 10.96. That is still quite a strong Westerly QBO. The monthly return for August comes out at plus 9.97. Again, quite strong. September has reduced the QBO number again, though, to plus 8.25. So there was a bit of speculation, actually, that the sort of transition from the west to the east QBO, the weakening, if you like, of Westerly QBO, was a bit of speculation, but that weakening had stalled during September and possibly gone into reverse. Actually, that didn't happen. September did see a further weakening of the Westerly QBO compared to July and August. Of course, we've got October and November and December to put in just there. Very much looks like this winter is going to be transitioning from a westerly to an easterly QBO. This is from NASA, so this is showing the west and east phases of the QBO through yearly periods. These sandy coloured colours, they're the westerly phases of the QBO. The darker colours, the blue colours, they're the easterly phases of the QBO. So you've got these sort of atmospheric levels just here, right from the top of the atmosphere. That's 10 HPA there to kind of like ground level down there. To get to be in an easterly or westerly phase of the QBO, you need to get the QBO phase down to around 30 to 50 HPA. That's the all-important part of the atmosphere. That's the troposphere, where weather is taking place. So if we come down here, you can see that at the moment we're still in this westerly phase of the QBO. We've got westerly QBO through that 30-50 HPA level of the atmosphere. You can see that above it, though, towards the top levels of the atmosphere, we do have this strengthening and descending easterly QBO indicated by these blue colours. We've got to push that blue area there down a little bit lower to around there. Once it gets to around there, around 30 HPA, then we will have moved into the easterly phase of the QBO. And the reason we look at this is particularly for winter, it's important because when you're in an easterly QBO, the zone of westerlies will be weakened. When you are in a westerly QBO, the zone of westerlies will be strengthened. So at its crudest, an easterly QBO tends to increase your chance of a colder and more blocked winter. It's not as straightforward as that, though, because there are many easterly QBOs that have happened to coincide with mild winters. Nothing is ever straightforward for the UK. If we come down here, this is actually showing each individual day's QBO data. So again, same idea. We've got the levels of the atmosphere just there. To get the easterly QBO, to be able to say we're in an easterly QBO, we need to get the blue area down to there, 30 to 50 HPA. At the moment, it's up here. Again, around 10 to 20 HPA up in the stratosphere, and just beginning to go a little bit lower than that. But we can see that actually over the past few days we have been moving those blue colours just a little bit further down. So we're still in the westerly QBO. We'll probably still be in the westerly QBO for the next month or two. But I reckon this winter we'll see a transition from the west to the easterly QBO. Now, I know what a lot of you are waiting to see is what that means in terms of the winter. So what we've got to look at is those winters that transition from a west to an east QBO. So I want to take you back to this chart and go up to 1955, 1956. So you can see that in 1955, we begin 1955 actually with an easterly QBO, although it's weakening and going into westerly QBO. That westerly QBO then strengthens a little bit through most of 1955, but we get to November and then we get to January, and you'll note, get to December, I should say, of 1955, you'll notice those positive numbers are weakening. So by January 1956, we have our first negative number, and that continues into February, March, April. And so the winter of 1955, 1956 was a transitioning west to east QBO winter. What we're going to look at for our reanalysis for this final part of the video is those winters that transition from a west to an east QBO. We're going to start off with winter of 1955-1956. It turned up in our first analog package that we looked at the start of this video, but we started off with the September CT. It's here again for these westerly to easterly QBO winters. So we know what happened with this winter. Started off mild and unsettled in December of 1955, finished up severely cold in February of 1956. The next west to east QBO winter in our analogues package is 1964-1965. This one is quite a cold 1960s winter, but then again many of them were. So this one again, below average heights to our south and east, high pressure, above average heights out to our northwest. That pulls in winds from a northeasterly direction. Quite a cold winter in 1964-1965, especially so late on. The next west to east QBO winter is 1973-1974. This one also turned up in the analogues package that we started this 6th winter update with. This is a mild and wet winter, and we're bringing in those west to southwesterly winds in this winter. Quite a long gap then to 1995-1996. So yes, this is a cold and actually close to solar minimum winter. 95-96 is a very block winter. We have low pressure to our south. We have high pressure to the north, and we bring in easterly winds. So this transitioning west to east QBO winter of 95-96 is in our analogues package, and it is a cold winter too. However, we've also got 97-98. Again, that showed up in the earlier analogues as well. This one bringing up winds from the southwest. So again, it's an exceptionally mild winter, 97-98. The thing to keep in mind with that one, though, is that it's a Super Nino. So I'm not sure that, although it is turning up quite a lot, actually, in our winter updates this year, I'm not sure that will be all that relevant when we get to bring the forecast together. Probably weight that a little bit down, I think, because we're not going to have a Super Nino for this winter. The next one is 2002-2003. Again, that one showing up in our earlier analogues package, bringing in the winds from the east, you would have thought, but it's not a particularly cold winter in 2002-2003. And then the next west to east QBO winter is 2004-2005. In fact, this is the last one. So it is quite rare, actually, to transition the QBO from west to east during the winter. It doesn't happen all that often. I've got a feeling it's going to happen this winter, I have to say, but it doesn't happen all that often. This one, 2004-5, is a relatively mild early winter. It gets cold late on. Late February into March 2005 is particularly cold. If you bring all of that together, this is how all Decembers combined are looking when you are in a west to east QBO phase. So all Decembers combined tends to have above average heights out to the west of us. It tends to have below average heights to our east. We tend to be bringing wind from a northerly direction. So there's a bit of cold potential there, but it's not classic northern blocking, and there will be a lot of modification from the Atlantic. So overall, I would say rather coolish Decembers and unsettled, but not really cold. That's how all January's combined are looking. So again, above average heights to the north, but not all that strong. Below average heights to west-southwest, probably relatively mild signal for January when you are transitioning from a west to an east QBO. But look what happens in February, and it's very much in line with the earlier analogues package as well, interestingly, those September CT. So this is bringing everything back to the start of the update, really. And this one shows that in February's, or February's combined, in a west to east QBO phase, you tend to increase high pressure to the north and west. Low pressure tends to be to the south, and you tend to open the door more to those northeasterly winds. So a colder signal potentially for February, probably because the easterly QBO is strengthening as we're going along, and that's weakening the zone of westerlies perhaps. And then you get to all March combined in a west to east QBO phase with below average heights to the southwest and above average heights tending to be to the north. Strong blocking signal bringing in those easterly winds. Definitely a cold signal for March as well. Bringing all of that together then, this is how all winters combined look when you are in a west to east QBO phase. So it tends to have a blocking signal to the north, tends to have below average heights to the south, but bear in mind this is transitional, very much like the first analog package that we started off with this update. So December, January, not particularly favouring cold conditions. February, March, definitely favouring an increased chance of cold conditions. One final thing we can look at for the QBO, and what can occasionally happen, is that you won't transition into the easterly QBO through the winter. You will just get a lingering westerly QBO type phase. That's what happened in the winter, for example, of 1959-1960. So 1959 begins with an easterly QBO, those negative numbers. Then it goes into a strengthening westerly QBO the second half of the year. You'll notice that by December 1959, that strengthening westerly QBO, that westerly QBO is weakening. And then that weakening westerly QBO continues to linger on, won't go, just lingers on, clinging on by its fingertips through January and February. It's not till March, April and May, not till the spring of 1960, that the easterly QBO finally starts getting going. Now, this is quite unusual for that to happen, and I anticipate this winter will transition west to east. But the last thing we can show you is what happens in winters where the westerly QBO just lingers on, and the proper transition into the easterly QBO takes place just after the winter. So the first one is 1959-1960 with a lingering west QBO. This one has a blocking signal up to the north, but it's more centred over towards Canada with low pressure in the Atlantic. This is a relatively unsettled and mild winter in 1959-1960. Many of the winters in 1960 were cold, but that's a milder one. The next one is 1961-1962, where we have a lingering westerly QBO. This one has above average heights up towards Greenland and the North Atlantic, below average heights to the east of us, and bringing in the wind sort of from the north. That is quite cold at times, the winter of 61-62, of course greatly overshadowed by the daddy of cold winter 62-63, which followed it. But it does have a cold late winter, in particular late February into March of 1962 is cold. 69-70 is also a lingering west QBO winter. This one has quite a lot of northern blocking with below average heights over to the east of us. That's a pretty cold winter, especially again late on, February and into March 1970. Very, very cold with a lot of snowfalls, severe snowfalls at times. And the last one, actually, the last time he had a lingering westerly QBO was winter of 1978-1979. Again, that showed up in the analogs package that we started this update with. Again, we know what happened in this winter of discontent. We push a jet stream and the storm track southwards. We increase the blocking around Greenland and we open the door for those very cold easterly winds. So with a lingering westerly QBO through the winter, again, there's not many of these winters that do this, so that's the caveat. It's quite unusual to have a lingering westerly QBO through the winter. But if it happens, if you put all Decembers together, combine them all together, that's how it looks. A strengthened northern blocking signal, actually, and the below average heights in the Atlantic a little bit further south. So there will probably be greater cold potential. And I was surprised when I saw this, when the analogs came through. I was quite surprised about this. A lingering westerly QBO actually has a colder potential in December compared to the west to east transition. Look at that, that's January. That's all January's combined with a lingering westerly QBO. Look how far south the trough and the jet stream is pushed, strengthening the northern blocking over Greenland, opening the door to those easterly winds. That is signaling quite the chance of quite a cold January with these lingering westerly QBO winters. That's February, that's the best of all for cold. Major blocking towards Greenland and aligned with the below average heights over and to the east of the country, to bring the wind in from the northeast. Obviously, all February's combined. There's only 4 of them, so that is the caveat. It does include 1979, which is a very cold winter, but lingering westerly QBOs definitely favouring a cold February, and it carries on into March as well. Lingering westerly QBOs also favouring a cold March with northern blocking from the Arctic down into Greenland. The jet stream is shoved a long way southwards, finally putting everything together. That's how all winters combined are looking, with a lingering westerly QBO, and seemingly there is a greater chance of a cold winter from a lingering westerly QBO compared to the west to east transitioning QBO winter. I was very, very surprised when I saw this. But there we go, that's what the data suggests. But do bear in mind, again, only 4 winters for these lingering westerly QBO winters. So it's a small sample. We haven't done it, actually, since 1978, 1979. We haven't had a lingering westerly QBO since 1978, 1979. But very, very interesting data. I've got a feeling we will probably transition the QBO from west to east in the straightforward way that the first package of analogues was showing, rather than have a lingering westerly QBO, which is quite unusual. But either way, it looks like the chance increases as the winter goes along, whether it's west to east or whether it's lingering west QBO. It looks like the chance of colder conditions increases as the winter goes on. Finally, if you've been enjoying this winter update and you have enjoyed all of the winter updates I've done so far, please consider becoming a patron for GWV. We've got 60 patrons so far. Hello and a big thank you to our 60 patrons. If you'd like to become a patron of GWV, give an ongoing monthly donation. You can just come to GWV's Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account, and then you give an ongoing monthly donation to GWV and help us fund the website and the content. And a big thank you to all of our patrons. Alternatively, you can become a donor. You can go to GWV's PayPal page, this is it, and you can give a donation through PayPal. And when you do it through PayPal or Patreon, you'll get a mention in the videos, and we'll say thank you so much for doing that. 1 hour, 5 minutes, true epic sick winter 2019-2020 update. I hope you've enjoyed it, and that's it. So I think that QBO data was quite surprising. It's interesting how many of those west to east transitioning QBOs coincide with where we started with the September CTs. Whether there's a connection there, whether it's just coincidence, it's up to you to decide. Let me know what you think in the comments anyway to that and the rest of the updates. We'll be back later on this afternoon with a written update for Christmas. That's getting the Christmas 2019 page going at GWV.com. And this evening between 5 and 6 o'clock, we're going to have a live chat on YouTube. We'll talk about this winter update. I'll take your questions and see what you thought to this update. This video will be placed on the winter updates page with a written summary going over everything that we discussed in the video, and I'll get that up for you around 8 o'clock tonight. But at 1 hour and 6 minutes, that's all for now. And thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.